People are starting to stream in. Um, Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. It's great to see um, many of you who are coming back for all of the webinars. Amazing. We have a very, very special guest today. We're very lucky to have Mustafa with us today, especially with a very busy day that he's having. So thank you, Mustafa, so much for your time and for the insights you're going to give us. Of course, all of you know Mustafa Khreiba is the Deputy Chief Executive Officer and Group Head of Asset Management of Shuaa Capital. I can tell you a lot about his achievements and what he manages, but if I'm gonna start telling you about the portfolio of things that he manages, I'm gonna eat up into his time. But he manages the investment activities of the business development aspect of the group. He oversees deal origination, fundraising, you name it. I think, at this level of seniority, the scope is very big. Before Shuaa, he held senior posts from the GCC to US and Canada. He's a fellow Canadian and graduated from UFT with an MBA from Ohio Dominican University. Mustafa, pleasure that you're here with us. We're gonna be talking and asking you a zillion questions about your insights, about your read of the situation, about the recovery and the journey towards that. So welcome.
Thank you, Sam. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you having me on this webinar. And inshallah, hopefully I'll bring in some insight from my world and how we see things from my perspective.
All right.
It doesn't agree with everybody else, but we'll try.
Absolutely. We usually have a very engaged audience and we'll get to their answers in a little bit. But let me just start getting your read on the situation, what's happening. We're 3 months into COVID-19, into this crisis. How do you things stand from your point of view?
Look, first and foremost, we should approach any calamity with a lot of optimism. And specifically, I am an optimist rather than a pessimist. Humanity has persevered throughout its existence. The human race is a very resilient race. I think very little would stand in our way, and in the same token, we always overcome and overachieve. This is not the only calamity or only hard time that we've gone through in our lifetime or in the existence. If you want to take it from a different view, but it's also the most significant economic, social, impactful event over the last 100 years or so. But the way we look at things, you should look at it. If you're here and you're listening to us, then you're surviving very well. You're healthy, I hope. If you're able to access us, then you've got internet. So this is something that we've never had before. Bottom line is, if you are still around, still smiling, then you're resilient and you want to continue and you think that there's a light at the end of this long, dark tunnel. However, we cannot discount the complexity of this pandemic or the situation. Even as countries today around the world have begun their easing lockdown restrictions, it is still unclear when will things return to a norm, if there is going to be a norm. Is it going to be a new norm, or are we going to go back to what we've really been accustomed to living as a normality? At the moment, no one can even really define this new normal, to be honest with you. All of us can attempt, everybody can tell you what they think is happening, what they think should be happening, how the reactions and how everybody is sort of coping, but nobody can really tell you what the heck is going on. But it is, though, from a business perspective, very clear that the recovery phase will take some time. This will take a lot of time and a lot of work. Planning, I think, in my opinion, is the largest. If you want to be able to make sure that you're putting your foot, and I'm talking from a business perspective, if you want to make sure that your business is being put on the right foot forward, we need to take a step back, relook at our strategy, build the resilience of our companies, reconfigure what our businesses are all about, probably reinvent our operational models. We need to look at the likelihood of this business being sustainable. Is there a successful recovery in the near future, and so forth. There are a lot of uncertainties, but with uncertainty, the only way you can overcome that is planning. So if you're planning properly and take a look at your business from a macro perspective, look at your scenario planning, look at your different objectives and different sort of trajectories for the future of your business, then you should be on a good footing. There is no right or wrong answer. In my view, planning. What we have to look at today is all businesses are in a moment of a necessary pivot. If you're not catering to the present populace, and if you're not catering to the need of your historical, let's say, audience, then you need to reinvent yourself and reinvent your business plan. People say, you need to get into disruptive businesses. Disruption is not a word I like, because disruption essentially just means that you want to take an existing business line or an existing operation and add to that operation a better way of doing that operation. In my view, people should look at reinventing the operation in its entirety. So not necessarily disrupting businesses, but in essence, creating new lines of business that will really lead to future revenue generation. It's very, very, very important. I think the biggest goal now from a business perspective is to create a very minimalistic, opportunistic strategy for your existing business lines. You need to take a look. What I'm doing today, is it going to get me to where I want to be in 5, 10 years, 15 years? Is this the same business strategy I want to continue providing? Should I restructure and change my base business case? Definitely, these are all questions you need to ask. There are two ways. In our business, at least, we take a look at the bottom line. Everybody works for the bottom line. Very few people, I have to say, very few people run charities and non-for-profit organizations, but in my line of business, we pretty much go for the bottom line. And there's only two ways to do that. Either you increase your revenues, or you really decrease your OPEX and your operating expenses moving forward. So just the general view of how I look at things. In the short term, it's always going to be a short-term pain. In the medium term, we will see a lot of green shoots coming into the market towards the end of the year. I think the world is economically opening up is a very big driver for continued business sanity, let's say. So as more businesses open up, as more countries open up, as economies start to trade, we will see a lot more consumption of carbohydrate. You will see a lot more consumption of oil. The demand will increase, supply will follow, etc. So the engine will start working again, creating momentum.
Right. But in these, you mentioned a lot of, you stressed on planning and a bit more planning. And I think that's really essential in looking at, how do you go forward. But a lot of people, don't know how to actually do that. You're planning towards what? Because it's completely unknown. And you're kind of shooting in the dark. Because it depends also on your industry. Some industries will make it, some industries will not be around anymore, at least in the form that we know them. So, how do you make an informed decision when how are you doing that?
Look, it's you take a look at each of your business lines, or like for us, we're quite unique because we operate in such a diverse, sector and regional exposure. But for companies that have a specific business model, you need to really take a look at updating your strategic direction and your enterprise-wide sort of direction and financial aspirations for the companies. What is it that you guys are looking for? How are you comparing to your forecasts? How are you looking at your budgets? Are you close? Are you not? What are the factors that are considering? Now, for example, some of the businesses that today have been hugely affected are the day-to-day client-facing models. So basically, these are, you're talking about the small SMEs, the retail, the F&B, the entertainment, the travel, the tourism, because that business model entails the human being to be active in this globe, then it has been greatly affected, and so is the consumer goods sector. So that sector, for example, look, not long ago, Airbnb and all these elements were the jewels of the VC world. These have created wealth beyond belief. The multiples that they were trading on were incredible, all based on the fact that these are businesses based on consumer behavior. So what happened over the last 4 months with Airbnb, for example? Not a single booking, probably. I'm not following the company very deeply, but these are the types of things that you need to remodel. However, because they had a sustainable business program and they knew exactly where they wanted to go, how they wanted to get there, look at them today. They're really enjoying exceptional rates of recovery because now people are opening up. People are going to be booking Airbnb back in for vacations. They're going to go back onto their websites. They're going to start taking the Ubers and the Careems of this world. So that engine cyclically moves forward. My personal advice to any business owner or a leading figure or a C-suite is you need to really sit down, take a look at your business model today. First of all, you got to look at all your expenses. You have to be operating as much lean as possible. This is a no-brainer. You need to eliminate all the extras, eliminate all the fluff, possibly reduce your burn rate as much as you possibly can, because you are going to be in a somewhat, which I believe is the case, of a Nike swoosh kind of recovery. So it will take a little bit of time for it to ramp up. So you need to operate it very leanly. And then look at the business model itself. If I'm selling pizza, should I be selling pizza to walk-in, or should I be part of, a delivery chain? Should I be part of, an online platform? How can I digitize? How can I, become more technology-driven? These are all things that you need to take a look at. One thing's for sure is that technology and digitization is going to be a big player and a big part of how businesses operate in the future. That's definitely for sure. Absolutely.
Do you see any certain sectors or industries thriving other than technology, what's going to be enabling all of us?
Look, technology will enable everything we do, Salma. This is, everybody has to understand that. Certain sectors have certainly been hit more than others. Definitely, aviation, tourism has been a major hit. Ask me firsthand, I know. We have a major, property in prime central London that we shut down, example, for the last 4 months, simply because we can't open. And you will not be able to open as per the government regulation. At the same time, you will not have the sort of إقبال إنه مثل الأول يعني. You're not going to have the same traffic and the same people that want to come and stay there. So those are majorly hit. Areas that will flourish, I think, are all technology and remote driven businesses will flourish. Our ability today, which is very important now, our ability to work from home and from remote locations, not necessarily having to go to a brick and mortar office, is very significant. You are talking about, for example, just Google and Apple have recently built global headquarters where now they're saying, maybe we don't need, such a big real estate investment, which is significant. This is significant for real estate, significant for home and residential sales. It's significant for the commute, the use of gas to fill your car. If you're not going to work, you're not using your car that much. So what will you do? You will depend on neighborhood stores. You will depend on grocery delivery applications. You will depend on food delivery. You will depend on the Amazon type of purchasing power and exposure and so forth. There's a lot of elements. In my view, all the businesses will recover. Sooner or later, businesses will recover because Today, and I tell everybody, look, and even for our staff, I've told all my staff, look, we've quarantined ourselves for the last 90 days. We're growing very edgy, antsy. We want to leave, we want to go, we want to interact. But actually today is the most critical time. We need to stay in house. You need to quarantine yourself today more than we needed to 3 months ago. So if we forget that, then we open up, another can of worms and so forth. We have been exceptionally efficient working from home, honestly. The level of efficiency has skyrocketed. Now you can attribute that to the fact that, when people stay at home, they feel guilty and they think they need to work a lot more. So they're trying to produce a lot more than they would have in the office. But in my view, it's more efficient because you're wasting less time commuting, chit-chatting. I went to the office 2 days ago just for one very, very important meeting. And it was the first time in almost 95 days. I spent the first 30 minutes of that meeting talking about global matters and non-business related issues. And it's not completely a waste of time, but it really, detracts me from exactly why we wanted to meet. I haven't been able to have this, candid conversation on Zoom with anybody really from anywhere. You get straight to the point. If you'll talk a little bit about the background, a little bit about your the nice painting on the wall of your house and so forth, but you really move right back into the conversation, which is very, very important. So there's a lot of changes that are going to coming through, and I think a lot of businesses, they need to really refocus their target audience.
Absolutely, and I think the winners in terms of not only businesses but also in terms of people are people who are able to absorb, adapt and adopt to this new, because changes are going to be here. We're going to be reimagining, repivoting, like you said. But the winners of this world, I guess, are people who are able to do it quicker than others, who are able to take things in stride and move forward, cut the losses, because
hopefully not cut losses, but I think companies and people, so we'll speak on a sort of general, need to show resolve, definitely be resilient, focus on the return profile of whatever it is that they want to do, reimagine how to do it, and implement any reform they think is necessary. These are kind of the step-by-step, thinking process that needs to be taking place. Nothing fixes itself by itself. صعب very, very difficult. You really need to work harder, and now more than ever صراحة.
Absolutely, but how do you get to that mindset? Because we're talking about, you're talking about the business and what we need to do, but you need to be in a certain mindset and with certain characteristics to be able to lead and get people engaged. Because people, when this started happening, people were stuck in the fear stage. We're obsessed with it. We don't want to get infected. We're locked down. Paralysis kind of stuff. How do you, how were you able to move your team and mobilize and get to a point where productivity is now the name of the game?
Yeah, look, I think it's leadership takes a toll on people and shows in times of crises, honestly. So if you lead by example, and we've always led by example, ever since 2011 when we started the company, I was kind of, let's say employee number one, and Jassim and I, and we've always led by example, where we've worked as hard as, the most junior person in the team. Not simply because we wanted to set an example, but truly we love what we do, so we enjoy it so much, so it's not work. But at the same time, it developed into a culture, and I sent out a tweet a couple of days ago where I quoted Ducker by saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Very, very important to understand, because if you do not that strategy is not important, which is very, very, very important, but a culture built on good, great fundamentals will definitely prevail and lead that organization and lead yourself to where you need to be. We face today you know, as a company, like any company, we faced a lot of challenges. The first is automatically we said, okay, let's go home and everybody work remotely. One thing that we've been doing is that, and I don't know if this is luck or this is intuition or this is part of our leadership, but we've been anticipating a major effect on the global economy since, let's say, October of 2019. So we've been preparing our organization for somewhat of a calamity. We didn't know it's going to be obviously, you know, a COVID-19 kind of catastrophe, but we were somewhat preparing ourselves and the organization and being able to remotely work, as well as our technological platform and so forth. But more importantly, we were preparing our financials for such times, where we made sure we had ample liquidity. We made sure that we have, you know, restructured any debt that was outstanding, or is there any debt that's coming due and so forth. So we were looking at things from a holistic point of view. But one thing that we did do is we always maintained our optimism. So we can be faced with a heck of a lot of, you know, negativity during the day, and you can listen and hear and read everything that's related to Corona and COVID is always negative, negative this, negative that. But if you immerse yourself in this type of thinking, you will completely just keep digging yourself deeper and deeper into a bigger hole. The biggest challenge is to take this with a stride and a big smile and optimism. I think that's the biggest thing. We maintained quite a close relationship, especially with my senior staff and all my business heads. So I do 3 times a week a must dial in. It's a Zoom, of course, but we must dial in, and everybody gives an update of where they are, what they're going to be achieving this week, and what struggles, and how do they want other business parts of the business to help them out. Because this is the time where you come together. So we no longer look at our businesses in terms of business lines and revenue streams and so forth. You look at the whole thing as, you know, one for all and all for one. You know, the 3 musketeer kind of motto, which is very, very important. Optimism, a clear vision of where you want to be, having a fantastic team, and having the ability to lead them and having them want to follow you, because you can lead, but if you're a lousy leader, nobody's going to follow you.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, that's important. And these are the critical success factors, because I remember us chatting when, you know, early days when this started, and I kind of mentioned, you know, this is really like putting a stress test on everything that we know. And you came back and you said, what stress test? This is a full-fledged Armageddon. You know, you know, in a complete full-fledged Armageddon, these are the things that you need to be very firmly rooting down, because when everything is uncertain and you can go everywhere, you need some kind of pillars that hold you down, that give you anchors.
Yeah, I think one of the leaders' biggest attributes or contributions is to keep hope alive and to show the team that he or she or they know exactly where we're going and how we're going to get there, which is very important. You can want to be the number one, you know, distributor of laptops, but if you don't know how to get there, it doesn't mean anything. So it's very, very important that, you know, you take your team and you tell them, you know, we want to be this, and this is exactly the path that we're going to get there.
Absolutely. So, Mustafa, I wanted to get your input, because a lot of these discussions and you know, articles being written and so on, like you said, everybody has a different point of view depending on their experience, their industries, and so on. But there's a lot of discussion happening about, you know, globalization rather than doing things in country, being more in control of the supply chains, being more in control of what happens, because if China locks down, you don't want it to affect as majorly as it does your business. So how do you see the trend shifting in that way? Do you see it becoming more local, you know, or staying global in their interdependencies?
Look, I don't think there's any such thing as globalization or localization. Businesses should be able to sustain their operations within the parameters of where they chose to operate. Today, we talk about globalization, we talk about China, we talk about the US, we talk about trade wars, we talk about, the scarcity of product coming from wherever we're importing. And again, I reflect this in our business lines. We have exposure pretty much across the globe. Doesn't mean that we are highly dependent on the world becoming this globalization hub, or the fact that we need to be part of a globalization theme or movement to succeed. On the contrary, I'll give you a small example. Today we are all working from home. What prevents me from being based in Abu Dhabi to be an added asset to a company based in Silicon Valley in San Francisco? Absolutely nothing, because other than the time frame, I have to switch my sleeping habits. But essentially, what this pandemic and this situation has created just on the labor market is now, as a company, I have access to talent globally. It doesn't matter where you are. For me, Salma could be living in Australia for all I want, but she has the skill set that I need, and I'm willing to hire her because everybody's working globally and working globally efficiently, locally, from home. So, just on a small example, from an HR perspective and from a talent pool perspective, it's the same thing. Historically, for VCs to invest in you as a startup, whether it's seed or Series A or even growth capital, you needed to quote unquote be based in the Valley. You needed to be in California. You needed to be where. This is no longer the case. It doesn't mean that you need to be there to secure capital. We've seen it in Turkey with the acquisition that just happened with Leap. We've seen it in India with the Reliant Industries. We're seeing it here in the Middle East. It's no longer a necessity to be somewhere in order for us to be successful. I think globalization will soon become the normalization of things. We shouldn't look at things as I am local or I'm global, unless you're a small, SME that only caters to the local market, which is different. Those have a whole different set of challenges that they need to overcome, and we should definitely look at supporting the SME sector in whichever area we're living in.
So talk to us a little bit about the challenges that you see, because, the infrastructure and the support for SMEs is important, because part of the momentum and the curve of coming back, they play a big part if they survive.
SMEs, we have to understand, is a very important part of GDP growth and GDP contribution to any nation. So the SME sector basically creates the new jobs, creates ample employment, does the internal trading. The economy in itself is sort of greased by the SME sector. Where does the SME sector locally suffer? It suffers possibly from the inability for them to access funding, their inability to access cheap financing, the high demands that are put on suppliers for guaranteed letters of guarantee, letters of credit, the ability for them to access the local markets. All these have put a lot of pressure on the SME sector. Add on top of this the lockdown and the quasi-quarantining during COVID, you pretty much forced them to commit suicides. The government has graciously opened up the central bank vaults and provided up to 50 billion that goes into the sector to support the local business people, that support the local employers. All these incentivization programs, support programs from either the executive councils or the local governments, Dubai and Abu Dhabi and so forth, even in the US and everywhere, austerity measures are all great. But at the end of the day, they need more support than just, okay, you can go to the bank and access it, because that still takes time. That still takes an application process. That still, by the time that SME gets a hold of the first dollar, they've suffered, 5 weeks of excruciating commercial pains and negative revenues. it doesn't become sustainable. What we did, and we did a small actually initiative which had been very, very successful. So what we said about 3-4 weeks ago, that we put out, and we will look to support any SME company that is locally present with advice, support, restructuring, and interest-free loans. Why did we do that? We didn't do that because we really needed that business. We don't. This is a small part of it, but this is our way of giving back to the local community and showing that, guys, as a second largest asset manager in the MENA region, in the Middle East, and the first actually privately held one or non-governmental asset manager, we want to give back to the community and we want to support because we recognize the importance of SMEs. The challenge is, and I see it from our tech investing and VC investing arm, is that all these founders and all these small portfolio companies need hand-holding. Hand-holding far outweighs any financial or monetary compensation or support that you can provide at great times. People with experience, that have gone through the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of markets, will provide far more, positive insight to these small business owners than people can imagine. Even for them to listen to a podcast or to listen to a webinar, or for you to sit down and say, what's your biggest problem? What is the issue? Have you thought about doing things this way? Have you thought about doing things in that way? That alone provides so much greater value than people think. And we should definitely always try to reach out with SME. It's the driving engine of any economy.
Absolutely. And I think this is one of the nice aspects of being in this crisis. We see a lot of people reaching out and trying to help and trying to support, not everybody, but I think there's a genuine feeling and sense that we're all in this together. And if the economy is going to go back and really become robust again and healthy again, each one of us has to play a part in, lifting each other up whenever we can. So definitely finance, I find, it's not that easy, but it's the easiest of anything, giving people money and so on.
You can throw money at anything and hoping that it will work, but it doesn't always work.
Absolutely. But giving dedicated focus and advice and time and experience, I think that's where you really impact people's lives and businesses' lives. So that's awesome. What's next for your industry? What do you see, opportunities in terms of acquisitions? Where's the investment going? Where is asset management? Where do you see it, heading?
Look, asset management, investment management, these are all sort of historical behemoths of the financial services world. So asset management, investment, that will not change. The way you manage your assets and the way you are analyzing investments and the sectors you're investing in definitely changes. For us, the pivot for, let's say, Shu'a, and by the way, we're a publicly listed entity, so I cannot release non-publicly available information. But, for us, I'm looking to pivot our business into the next future, whether it's, investing in fintech or even collab tech, whether we want to start looking at a lot more of the VC seed investing in some of the up and coming stars in the Middle East, and of which, by the way, we have a phenomenal ecosystem of entrepreneurs in the Middle East that truly outranks anywhere else. People may or may not know, but we're closely affiliated with 500 startups out of Silicon Valley. And 500 startups is a venture capital investor. Actually, it's the largest investor per deal in the world. They've invested in over 2,600 companies. We do 600 deals a year, which means that we look at anywhere between 7,000 and 10,000 opportunities on an annual basis. We have offices in 22 countries around the world. So you can see, so I'm talking from that perspective, and I tell you that the Middle East has collectively matched even those small startups that are based in the US. There is a great amount of talent here, and we are very keen on discovering that talent and really putting, our money where our mouth is. And that's, I think, where we as Shraa will be pivoting. We will focus on our core fundamentals and our core business lines, which is very, very critical because it's made us who we are. We manage $14 billion worth of those assets. But I think it's also now very important for us to pivot into the future element of our business: automation, digitization of the services that we provide, our investor analysis, investment analysis, how we look at opportunities, taking the support of, again, I will use the word, but I don't like it, disruptive technology. We should definitely be ahead of the curve there, but 3 years ago or so, we decided that we will start investing in technology. And the primary reason we did that is we recognized early on that technology will be a big part of our industry. And instead of waiting for technology to come in and, again, quote unquote, disrupt our business, let us disrupt our own business. And that's what we did. So we created a whole division that would actually come up with disruptive technologies to our core business lines. And then we commercialized it. So we've taken two benefits. Number one, we've determined what our weak spots are, what our vulnerability is, and sort of fixed it. But at the same time, wow, it works so well, we're going to commercialize it, and then we can sell it as an external product. And that's what we've done. And that's what I think what we will continue to do. We have a lot of new initiatives coming up. Over the last 3 months, it's really been really, really busy for us. And I think within the next, طبعاً Hani's on the call, but certain things we can and cannot release, but within the next few weeks, you will see a lot of things coming out of Shraa that will be quite optimistic and impressive.
That's awesome. I mean, that's you've heightened our curiosity and definitely are giving us definite hope. Do you think that partnerships are the name of the game more now than before, going forward? Like people collaborating rather than competing, or that kind of model?
Look, I think the best business model in the world is a monopoly, right? So you want to succeed and you want to achieve something beyond belief, you got to be monopolistic in your view. Example, it could be not a pure monopoly, but Google is a pure monopoly, as close to monopoly as you possibly can. Amazon is as well. So this is where the maximum shareholder value is extracted from a monopolistic business model.
So a lot of acquisitions in the horizon.
Huh?
A lot of acquisitions in the horizon, I would think.
No, look, acquisition, I think not collaboration, but consolidation will be the theme moving forward. Companies that historically thought that they can survive by their own may not be able to make it through this difficult time. So it would make sense for the stakeholders to join forces, but under a consolidation umbrella. But collaboration and partnership, unless both parties and stakeholders are fully aligned, it's a very difficult thing to achieve, honestly. It cannot come at no expense. This is untrue. The best model is M&A and consolidation, in my view, rather than partnership.
Okay, fantastic.
I've met so many people, but this is just my view, yeah.
Fantastic. We're gonna open it up for people to ask questions, and I'm gonna unmute everybody, I guess. So please, your questions, thoughts for Mustafa on what we've spoken about. Hi, Lina.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. My daughter here is speaking, so I'm gonna leave. I'm sorry.
No worries. Okay. Any questions? I think for Mustafa. Did I unmute everybody? Not yet. Okay.
whoever wants.
Salma, you have muted Mustafa.
By mistake, I think. Yes, sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I said, look how good I am. I answered everybody's queries, so nobody's got questions.
It seems so. It seems so. Okay.
Look, it's a very difficult time. There's a lot of questions, a lot of people, and I don't blame. Look, it's generally people are not very comfortable discussing their fears or their anxiety.
Yes.
This is something that's natural. You don't anticipate. But what's important is to recognize that you need to deal with that anxiety in one way or another. You need to deal with the situation you're in, whether it's lockdown, whether it's the fact that you're quarantined at home, you cannot move, you're immobile, school, homeschooling, etc. These are all elements. Now you are living it as part of your life. So you cannot ignore it, or you cannot just say, it will pass, don't worry, time will come, it will pass. Yeah, but it will pass. But by the time it will pass, maybe it would have done a lot more damage than you anticipated. So it's very important for people to understand that, really. And it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to not know how to move forward. It's definitely okay to not have the answer for everything. But I think it's not okay not to seek guidance. It's not okay to fully understand what possibilities are out there. It's not okay to just accept the status quo and wait for resolution.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, going into the spiral of negativity, like you said earlier, just you get, you dig yourself into a hole and you get more and more stuck. And the deeper it goes, the harder it becomes for you to stand up on your own feet. So we get a lot of news that are negative news. So, layoffs, people are losing their jobs, shakedowns in the industries, people leaving. So a lot of these things are disturbing people and affecting livelihoods. Cuts in salaries and so on. These are like becoming realities that people are dealing with. So mastering, like you said, being in charge and mastering our own mindset, making sure that it's okay, we're afraid, but courage is all about standing up when you are afraid, not when you're not afraid. So moving forward is very important. I had a related question. Mustafa, you talked about how important the culture is in business and to be able to lead the team and so on. What about businesses that didn't start off by having a good culture? I mean, this crisis came and they didn't have the elements of a good culture. So, what do you think they can do? Because, if you had the benefit of a great culture, then you can work with it.
Look, so I will direct my answer to leaders first, and then I'll direct it to the employees or the team. Look, for leaders, if when they're asking their team to do a certain task, they sense fear rather than respect and admiration, they've got a problem. You cannot lead by fear, because those individuals that fear you are fearing you now, but they're also focusing their efforts on leaving you because they fear you. This is very, very important. You cannot, our attrition rate, for example, and my turnover is very, very minimal. I've got, team members that we've hired, in our first month that are still with us today. It's very little attrition. Obviously, the only people that we let go are people that we let go due to lack of performance. It could be obviously people I've put in that position and I thought that they would perform. That becomes a very difficult conversation and you let them go. Look, culture by far is the most important element of your work and the workplace, because culture outweighs anything else for the employee. If the employee feels empowered, and you're always empowering your employees, showing them that you're respecting their opinion, you're not dictating to them what to do, you're always seeking guidance, you're always looking out for their own interest, they will follow you to the moon and back. And it then becomes not only monetary, it becomes, ya habibi, I am very comfortable and I see myself as part of this organization. I don't want to go somewhere else, even if pay is better, because if pay is better there, I don't know how my boss is going to treat me. I don't know if my boss is going to give me the day off for my son's graduation, etc. So for those leaders that are not sure of what their cultural existence is within the company, I would say that they really need to do a deep root analysis of their cultural awareness within the firm and understand it better, even if they, enlist a third party advisor to do that on their behalf. For employees, it's very tough. If you are working in an environment where you're, quote unquote, not feeling welcome, not feeling appreciated, not feeling, as part of a bigger purpose and team, and sometimes even abused, you are not going to flourish there, and you will never flourish there. You will wake up every morning miserable that you're going to work, which is not something you want to do. I would recommend by far a good culture environment, workplace, over somewhere where you get paid a lot of money, because it doesn't always come down to money. I mean, people can say it's easy for you to say, it's easy for anybody else to say, who are seniors and so forth. But no, it's true. It's always been the case. If I look back at my career history, starting from working at the Royal Bank of Canada all the way here, I remember specifically the crappiest managers I've ever had. I remember how miserable they made me feel. I remember, having to skip work because I really did not want to go and face those individuals. But not everybody is also like me. I had a certain vision, perseverance, and I said, I'm going to get to where I want to do no matter what. Some people, unfortunately have to work towards that. But culture is very, very, very important, in my opinion. And alhamdulillah, we have a great culture at ADFG Shu'a, because obviously now we're all Shu'a. And I encourage all leaders to really look at the culture within their organization and read about it, understand how it affects the morale, how it affects productivity, efficiency, everything that surrounds the success of your business really centers around culture.
Absolutely. I mean,
Salma, somebody asked a question here on writing, but I will, if you see it, I will read it and then I will try to answer it if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So the question says, do you think for the next 10 years, bulk investment and businesses will be shifting to the south side of the planet, especially South Asia and South America, especially all transactions and administrations will make it easier digitally? Okay. For us, we're an opportunistic firm. If you are talking about firms that operate in the same business model and a modus operandi like we do, we're opportunistic. I've never let the geography or the sector drive our appetite for a deal. On the contrary, we've always let the deal drive our appetite for it. And that's why today we have investments in Egypt, we have investments in Saudi Arabia, I have investments in Serbia and investments in Montenegro, US, London, because we've always sought the alpha. So it's not that we always said, no, I'm only going to be UAE-centric business and I'm only going to invest there. Now, where the opportunity lies today, I think Asia has a great potential and a great deal of pipeline of opportunities coming in the medium to long term. The demographics of the population alone in the Asian continent and the Asian subcontinent is remarkable. The speed upon which this demographic or this, purchasing power is growing and expanding is incredible. No business, I think, that wants to scale can scale in countries with small populations. It's very, very difficult. You need to be able to entertain those populous countries. India is a big deal. Egypt for the local economy, let's say. China obviously is a great opportunity, but you also cannot forget and forget about Korea. Korea is up and coming. It's fantastic. Vietnam is really a breeding ground for technology and up and coming VC investments. So definitely Asia and Southeast Asia is key. South America is a very turbulent market. I visited Brazil early last year in order to look at opportunities. And the minute that I had to drive in a bulletproof car, I knew that this is not a place where I really want to operate, because if having to just drive around the city, I needed to be in a bulletproof SUV. There's a lot more than economic returns. Mubadala were one of the first few companies to have to embark on investments in Brazil, and they did that because they inherited an investment that they did a long time ago there. Nevertheless, they've persevered and they're doing very, very well. South America has got a lot of opportunity, but there's a lot of infrastructure, government, legislative, political stability, monetary stability that needs to take place beforehand. Transaction association will take, look, like I said earlier, it's now becoming very easy to be in Abu Dhabi and do business anywhere around the world. You can do that. We can have conversations now around the world and sign deals and sign mandates and LOIs and MOUs without having to physically be anywhere. So as that evolves and as technology allows more and more of us to work remotely, I think it becomes easier to access different parts of the globe for business transactions.
Fantastic. And for people who are interested in doing investments, individual or business, where should we be putting our money, Mustafa? Where should
put your
we
money
invest?
in something? Put your money in something you understand. Do not follow the herd mentality. It's very, very important. People in 2006, 7, 5, 6, 7. Even in the beginning of 8, thought that the stock market and equities is the jackpot, and everybody just bought stocks and shares thinking that every stock goes up, every company performs, etc. The herd mentality is very detrimental. You need to really understand what it is you want to get out of your investment. You want to understand where you're investing, and if you don't understand, which is still fantastically okay, seek professional advice. I mean, banks have wealth advisors, investment companies such as ours have investment in financial advisors. But I would suggest that diversification is very, very important. Don't put your eggs all in one basket, neither geographically nor sector-wise. And depends on the end of the day what it is you want to get out and your time frame. There's a plethora of investment opportunities out there, really plethora. And for Shuja Ali, congratulations on your son going into UFT. He made the right choice. So all the best, and Allah yawfa, inshallah. And he will be very happy, and you should be very proud. I'm just commenting on somebody that sent me a note.
Yeah, your alma mater, of course.
Yes, absolutely. Very proud. Although it was much easier to get into back then, but now I hear it's quite difficult. But that's
one of the tough ones. It's one of the tough ones now.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. I can't believe how it is already 6 o'clock. I mean,
yeah, it's been an hour already. Wow, mashallah.
An hour already, and thank you so much. Very valuable, very practical steps. You gave us a great framework to think about and to start acting from. So really valuable. Thank you so much, Mustafa, for your time.
No, thank you for having me, Salma. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.